Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and today I've got a rake knife. Now, this was one of the rake knives recently sent to me for review by Matt over at Rake Knives Canada, and I will put a link to the description box down below so that if you want to pick one of these up, you can head on over there or even just go check out the other stuff that they've got, okay? So definitely want to give credit to them. Now, I've been carrying this, using it, and I've overall been pretty impressed with it, and honestly, you know, I've had, I don't know what number this would be, maybe some of you who pay closer attention can tell me exactly how many rake knives I have reviewed. It's been a few, and overall it's been quite good. I haven't had any glaring issues with them. I haven't loved every single design, but you know, that's kind of secondary because some of you may really love them, and so I try to comment more on quality and performance than I do on just the overall look of the knife. But this one I do find very attractive. In fact, I think this might be my favorite of rake knives to date. I love that they went with a satin blade this time. You may recall that I kind of complained a little about the bead blasted blade on the 128, which was similar to this. So really nice to see a satin blade on this guy. And you know what, let's go ahead and get into some of the specifications on this guy and sort of start discussing some features that I do like. Size and weight, overall 7 16 sorry, how about 8 7/16 inches? So that's the overall length on this guy. So just under, like a hair under 8.5 inches. All right. The blade length on here is 3 5/8. And the handle length is 4 7/8. So pretty nice blade to handle ratio there. The weight on this is a little hefty, and it's overall just a little more substantial than the previous model, the 128 that we looked at. This guy weighs in at 5.87 ounces, so a little heavy for its size. That said, my experience with it has been that that's not a big deal. Now, I know if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know I don't get that bent out of shape over knives that are really under 6 ounces. You know, once you start getting to 6.5 or so and above, weight becomes a bit more of a consideration for me. But so, you know, under 5 ounces, or I mean under 6 ounces, I'm not going to get too excited. In terms of how this knife carries, very well. Okay, it's not super thick. The clip goes in and out of pocket really nicely, and so even though it is a little heavier than I would maybe like to see for a knife of this size, it's not at all, you know, onerous to carry. So I've got to give some credit for that. The blade, let's talk about the blade, and I feel like a broken record talking about this all the time, but this is 14C28N blade steel with a satin finish, and it's sort of a modified reverse tanto, kind of, you know, it's not really a drop point or a Wharncliffe. It definitely has that reverse tanto cut here, so we'll just call it that. Flat grind, really nice satin finish on this blade, and it's nice and thin behind the edge, so this slices really well. Now, you know, as I've often said, I don't purposely go out and buy a knife for food prep, but if you wanted to use this, it would definitely do the job for you without any difficulty. And that 14C28N is going to perform really nice, guys. I really like that as a budget steel. I think it's pretty well the best one out there. Anything else I want to point out about the blade? Not too much, other than I do like the design, and it's a bit of a departure. If you want to take a second and go look at my review of the P128, again, I will put it at the end of this video, but that blade shape was really cool. I just didn't, but this one sort of connects with me a little more. I like this one just a little bit better. Really well done blade, absolutely great for EDC, nice and good balance here between, you know, sort of durability and slicing ability, and so I don't really have anything negative to say about this blade. I'm quite pleased with it. Action, let's talk about lockup and deployment. So you can see Torque's adjustable bearing there, stainless steel lock. Stainless steel frame lock. You can see that it does have that secondary lock, and honestly, guys, I don't use it. I literally, you know, it works, and I usually flick it on and off a few times while I'm testing, but I have never actually used it when I'm, you know, going to cut something. I don't think like, oh my goodness, I might cut myself, I better turn this on. Just hasn't been a need, okay? Now, I will say I like the stiffness of this. A couple of knives I've reviewed recently have had secondary locks up here, and I've pointed out that they always end up getting turned on by accident. Yeah, I've got a rake knife here that has that. So this is what I'm talking about, this secondary lock. I find I'm always accidentally turning this on, where with this position and the detent on this makes it just a little harder to snap on. And so I only end up using it when I really want to. And I have to give some credit for that. And I really, really like that particular approach. The lock bar has some really nice little jimping on there, which is really, really great. And the tension is set just about perfectly. I forgot to show you this, but you can see this knife is milled out to save weight. I should have showed you that when we were talking about weight, but since we're looking at the lock, you can see it now. Yeah, so in terms of lockup and deployment, really, really nicely done. And in fact, the bearing pivot in here is very smooth. I've often mentioned in videos that a lot of times a bearing pivot will, on budget knives, you'll kind of feel those bearings rolling around. It won't be nice and clean and smooth, but this one and the other rake knives that I've tried have been pretty good. So got to give some credit for that. I would say it's definitely hitting a little above its weight class on the smoothness of that action. Let's see here. Handle construction. So, you can see we've got a stainless steel frame lock here. The one thing is it has a G10 backspacer, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, the knife works fine. Maybe you could have saved some weight by going with, standoffs, pillar construction right there. Lanyard hole is definitely big enough for paracord, which is nice. All right. So I'm trying to hit on construction points right now. You can see single position clip right there. So if you're a lefty, this is not going to work out for you. Now, moving over to ergonomics, again, this is a win. Is it, as comfortable as the 128 or as other budget knives? Absolutely. This is really, really nice in hand. And the jimping here is really well done. It's just sharp enough that it works. It doesn't, sort of cut into you, but it definitely gives you a good positive grip. And there's a deep enough choil here, you're not going to slide up onto this knife. It's also, the blasted finish does provide a little bit of traction, so I don't find the knife slippery, which is a concern. We've talked about that before with stainless steel frame locks. Sometimes they're slippery, and this one is not. So again, this is just a really nice knife. Now, obviously, maybe you don't love the design or something, and that would be a different story. But if you really like the way this looks, there's nothing here stands out that makes me say, this is a piece of junk or there's some glaring issue with it. Overall, everything is really good. And even from an aesthetic standpoint, this is pretty attractive. There's some nice angles here, and the angles on the handle match the blade. It's just really, really overall a great design and well constructed, okay? The limitation, I guess, would maybe be that the stainless steel construction does make this heavier than if it was done in titanium or, G10 with thin liners or something else. But the look of the knife and the overall design would not work outside of, you've either got to go with a design like this, stainless steel or titanium. And I think this design and the level of quality would even justify that. Obviously, you'd want better blade steel then, but this is a really well done knife. So let's go ahead and get to some comparisons. I'll start with a couple of other rake knives. This is the 138B, sort of a variation here. Now, I've got to say, this is interesting because it has roller bearings. This one does not, but it'll be neat to see if Rake comes out with a few more roller bearing models. I don't love the look of this one, but the performance is definitely there. So that's a good comparison for you. I've got only one other rake knife here with me today. And this is the smaller one. This is the P831. And this has the bead blasted finish on the blade that we were talking about. Let me hold those up together so you can kind of compare. See the bead blast compared to the satin. And I definitely prefer that satin finish. A couple of knives you're probably a little more familiar with. First up is going to be the Rat Model 1. Again, I would feel these are pretty similar. 14C28N and D2, they're not. D2 is probably going to perform a little better, but 14C28N is definitely a good steel and much better than what you're usually going to get on a budget blade. Now here's a budget blade that has D2 as well. Again, a flipper, no bearings here, a little cheaper on this guy, and so if you're looking for a budget flipper, I think both of these would be knives to take a close look at. This is very, very lightweight, so maybe carries just a little, or I guess not very lightweight, but pretty lightweight. One other, now here we've got a stainless steel knife that I recently reviewed. This is, of course, the Liang Ma designed Nuke that he did for Battle Box. Again, pretty cool knife. Here's my thing about this knife. The price point is kind of outlandish on this guy. If you're interested in something like this, I think this is offering way more value for your dollar than something like the Nuke, even though I do think it's a really cool design, and it does offer a few upgrades over the Rake. So those are some comparisons for you. What about my overall thoughts? Well, guys, I've got to say, if you haven't figured it out by now, I think this is a total win. Okay, I think these guys go for about 65 bucks in Canada, probably about 50 bucks in the US. And at that price point, you know, these are really, really nice. The quality is absolutely there. The performance is there. I would take this over a whole long list of sort of, you know, $40 to $50 knives. This is a really, really good option. Good for EDC. It's heavily built enough that even, you know, you can go to sort of EDC plus type of uses. The blade design is a good combination of toughness and utility. So all around, just a really, really well done offering from Rake once again. And they do keep doing they do keep delivering some pretty nice knives. As I say, this is definitely a favorite design. So I don't love all of their designs, but I've consistently been pretty impressed, if I can get that sentence out, with their quality. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.